Hello everyone and welcome back to the Retro Recall. I hope we're doing awesome. On this channel, we have showcased a wide variety of computer systems from many years. All the way from early 8088 systems all the way through to some you would argue aren't so vintage and aren't so retro. One of the things that I get, no matter what I showcase on the bench, in the comments is you could have upgraded X, like the video card or the sound card, or put a different type of optical drive in there, or a different type of operating system. And, I read all those comments and I take them all in, of course, and I got thinking, one of the things, the trends that I see here is no matter what system we put on the bench, there's always that want, need, and desire to upgrade that system. Well, today we have three systems that you would argue are very much entry level, and they had their place in the market as well. So today we're going to go over these systems and ask ourselves the question, were they really that bad? We have lots to do. Let's get right to it. Welcome back, and we're back with system number one. And I'm going to kind of do a different kind of angle on this video. We're still going to go through and test all these systems because, again, these have been donated to the channel, and I do want to see if they even work, but I do want to go over the systems and talk about what their place would have been in the market. So the first system we have here is a very common sight that we've seen on this channel and something that we would have seen in the early 2000s quite a bit around in business offices as well as government agencies and of course home users and things like that, this infamous design. And I asked myself the question, is it that bad? And I've said that already in the intro, but I want you to keep that theme as we go through this. So this computer here does have an optical drive, unknown as to the speed, but the fact it does have an optical drive. It probably is just a CD rewritable, it says, I believe, in the front here. So it is a CD burner. It's great to have a CD burner in a system. So then we, of course, have a floppy disk drive area here, and it is populated as well because I know some of these systems did not always have that populated. We also have the insignia on the front. We have a Dell Dimension 3000 is the model, and this would have been one of their earlier models or one of their lower end models of this particular design. And of course, we have a couple of LED lights denoting the power and the hard disk activity. We have the good old typical Dell logo, and this one here does not flip up, but you had some models that had the ability to flip this front door up and access some front I/O. And of course, we do have a couple of ports down here for front I/O. We have some USB, and we do have some audio down here. And we also have the case badges here. So we have the design for Microsoft Windows XP and our Pentium 4 insignia on the front of the case. Now let's turn it around here and we'll see the wonderful Dell logo ingrained into the side of the chassis. And I'm looking around here, we have some deep gouges on the case, but in all overall shape, it's actually pretty good shape. It's no big dents or dings in this. And that's one of the things you look for in one of these systems. You can get this, again, this was donated to the channel, but I know you go on eBay, if you're looking for an entry-level system, something just to get you into some sort of retro computing, you can do that by looking for some of these systems that are online, that are selling relatively cheaply online. Okay, on the back of the system, we do have our PSU with our on-off switch, which is quite handy. We also have an array of ports that are already built onto the motherboard. So we do have a parallel port here. We do have our communications port, our serial. We do have built-on graphics. We do have our PS2 ports here for both our keyboard and our mouse. We do have, of course, our built-on sound, 4 USB and 1 Ethernet on the motherboard itself. Quite an array of ports, considering back in the years when computers were really being custom built prior to this, you would get all of this, of course, on add-on cards. And then there was a lot of controversy around built-on graphics and sound into the onto the motherboard, given the entry level chipsets that they were using at the time. And you would argue that, well, heck, I can go and my dedicated sound card and my dedicated graphics were far better. Fine, that's awesome, great. But when we're talking about entry level and we're talking about something to get into the market, I mean, this is brilliant. I mean, these systems sold so many systems. Dell just, they were everywhere. And it's because they jam packed them with features that got you by. And then down here, we do have some expansion ports as well as what looks like a modem installed as well. Okay, and we'll flip it around the other side. And I've been saying this 100 times. I do have to get one of those kind of turntable things that I know I see Adrian Black has one, and I should just get one. So we have our Windows XP CD key there, or access key. I like about this case is that we do have like a little notch back here that you just kind of push down, and this allows you to take the side of the case off. Again, regardless of what model you got, you do have the ability of having that nice toolless design. Okay, looking inside the system. Now, overall, I mean, we're going to compare a couple things here. Overall, the system itself doesn't look too bad in terms of dirt. I mean, it looks actually pretty good considering. We have a couple other things we're going to go over. So I'm just going to turn around the camera angle so we get a better view of inside this system. Okay, we have the inside of our infamous Dell here. So we do have a power supply. It is a Cooler Master branded power supply. So I'm not sure if this was particular to this system or if this had been replaced at some point in the lifetime of the system. We also have this amazing tunnel which comes right off of the heatsink for the processor, which is an absolutely brilliant design and quite easy to access. And it just promotes airflow through the system, which is absolutely wonderful. And I love the ability that Dell has given us here to be able to easily remove these. All the green sort of sections are implying user accessibility, which is quite nice. And again, I think this is a cool design for that purpose. And again, being entry level, I'm totally okay with that so far. So we have our array of ports along the back here. I'm looking at the capacitors and I'm not seeing anything indicating that there's any sort of damage to the capacitors in terms of the leaky or bulging. They're all looking pretty good, and this is from that era. And I will say this again, I say this quite a bit on the videos, is around the processing unit itself, you really got to keep an eye on the capacitors because of the heat in this area. They can aggravate those capacitors. So we do have memory installed here. We do have 2 banks that are installed. Let's just see what we have. I don't have any luck with memory, so no doubt when I go to put this back in. So we have 512 megabytes of, I believe this is DDR2 memory installed in the computer. And yeah, just the fact that we have that, and I believe it's another stick there as well of 512. So we have 1 gigabyte of memory installed in the system. Now, even though you only have the 2 slots, and being an entry-level system, you can still upgrade the memory if needed. Now, some of these boards allowed you to go to 1.5, allowed you to go to 2 gigabytes. And of course, you know, depending on what you were doing in terms of, you know, trying to max out whatever you had in your system, even though it was more entry-level, you did have the ability to do that. So it's definitely nice to have that. I mean, obviously, we really strive to have those boards with 4 slots and you can do lots of expansion. Well, that was not what this system's intended purpose was. This had a certain place in the market and definitely something that definitely opened it up and got it in people's homes. And that was what it was all about, getting these systems into people's homes. So we do have 3 PCI expansion ports that are here. And I do see the modem populated, and it looks like just one of those generic modems. I'm going to take it out just to take a look. So the chipset is just analog devices. It's probably just a 56K modem. Given the era in which the Pentium 4 was around, I would say this is probably more likely a 56K modem. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, everything else looks to be in really good shape. No doubt that coin cell battery, if it hasn't already been replaced, would need to be replaced. And yeah, oh, I am seeing that it is populated with a hard disk. So that's one of the things that I generally look for when I get these systems is, you know, is there a hard disk? You know, are we going to be able to boot this up into some sort of operating system, assuming that it is functional? So we'll definitely give that a test and see if that works and see if the existing OS is functional. But overall, I mean, it looks like a pretty decent, clean system. And this gives you a wide range of options. You also have the floppy disk drive here as well as the optical drive further up. And everything looks like pretty, you know, pretty standard of the day with the cables everywhere, even in an OEM system. Okay, I'm gonna get this flipped back around. We're gonna get the bench set up and we're gonna test this system out just to see if we're able to get this system fired up. Okay, we have the bench all set up with our Dell Dimension 3000 and our good old HP monitor, just flicking the switch on there. And we do have our keyboard and mouse, both branded Dell. I figured I'd bring those out of hibernation for a little bit to do a test on this system. So all I've done is plug it in. I don't know if it's gonna turn on yet. So I'm gonna go on the back and just flip the switch in the back. There we are with the power, and Dells are notorious for automatically turning on when you do that. So I'm just hitting pause at the very beginning of posting here. So we do have our Dell Dimension 3000 series. We do have our BIOS revision. I do like the Dell setup menus and screens. They give you a lot of options to be able to go in and do certain adjustments to systems that others may be locked out. So I do like that about the Dell systems. I'm going to hit F2 for setup just because I want to see what we have inside this build. You can see how the screen is so much larger than the actual tower itself. And like these came in an array of different heights and things like that, depending on the model. So we do have a Pentium 4 processor running at 2.8 gigahertz, level 2 cache of 1 megabyte integrated. And that's awesome. I mean, for what you're doing and the intended purpose of this system out of the box, you do have the ability to utilize this as a retro gaming system if you wanted to. I mean, there's different things with the PCI ability. You're able to add a dedicated graphics card, or if you're just going to run on some older DOS games and things like that, you can go in, turn off the cache in here. You're able to go in as well and utilize the onboard graphics. I mean, that would definitely give you some good wide range of ability right out of the box without having to do anything else. I think that's pretty cool. So, okay, so we do have our system date and time, which is obviously showing incorrect. I did mention that the coin cell was probably dead here. We do have our BIOS version mentioned above. We do have our drive configuration here, so it just gives you your idea of turn on and off, and it's nice that it gives you the different features, especially the UDMA here as well. Hard drive sequence, so that's what it, basically it says, hey, start up the BIOS first, then go to USB, and then go from there. I like the boot sequence that we have set up. I mean, we do have the floppy, the hard disk, and the CD-ROM device. Some people would argue that, there's different versions and different ways to do this. I personally like doing that myself. Memory information. So I may have read that wrong on the second chip. I was on an angle looking down on it. It looked the same to me on the sticker, but it is showing, it does look like a 512 and a 256. But, you could go in and upgrade that as well. And it does have the ability, it looks like, to have dual channel mode if needed. And that's something that no doubt it would automatically detect as you install the memory. CPU information. So we do have our bus speed of 533 megahertz. Our F41 is the processor ID, clock speed running at 2.8 gigahertz, and our L2 cache at 1 megabyte, which we knew above. We also have the wider range of legacy options here, and they're calling them legacy. It's funny, even at a Pentium 4 level, and now we're looking back at Pentium 4s as legacy. It's funny how times change all those things. So we do have the sound turned on, the network controller turned on, mouse port. So in here, you're able to go in and turn them on and off. And that's one of the things that's really crucial for when you're really trying to tweak your resources in this system. And I know our natural ability and natural mindset is to go in and start upgrading the system and start really adding things to it and shutting off the built-on stuff, as I mentioned earlier. And people looked at built-on audio and built-on graphics as bad things because you could get so much better sound cards and the graphics controllers that you could get via, the PCI bus. That's fine, but what was there is also fine. Again, if you were using this for home use and you want to do some entry-level gaming and things like that, you could still do that. So it would be well-rounded. Okay, we're just going to hit escape and see if this actually boots into any sort of operating system, because again, that already had the hard disk installed. So we do have Windows XP installed in this. So this is the first time we're seeing this boot up in front of us. I'm not sure if it has a password on it. I'm not sure any of that. Let's just see if we can get into the operating system. Obviously, if there's any sort of personal information, I'll clear that out during editing. Okay, we're still booting up here. And actually, it's running fairly quickly for what it is. I mean, I've had some of these systems on this bench that, quite frankly, have been extremely slow. So yeah, this is booting into Windows quite quickly. Under our system properties, we are showing that is Dell Dimension DIM 3000, Pentium 4 running at 2.8 gigahertz. Nothing new here. We do have Windows XP Home Edition version 2002 Service Pack 2. Okay, let's take a look at the device manager. We do have our disk drives here. It looks like it says a Western Digital drive. What do we have in terms of space? So we'll click on the C here, and it looks like just to be an 80 gigabyte hard drive. Okay, and we have our display adapters here. We have our Intel 82865G graphics controller. I mean, just your entry-level display built on graphics. I believe it had 1 megabyte memory that was showing in the BIOS. Under our optical drive, we have a Sony CDRW. So there we go. We have a Sony CDRW installed in this computer. We have our regular controllers and drives, floppy drives, and all those good things. And under our modem, we have our US Robotics 56K voice WIN modem. So there you go. So, I mean, I'm actually surprised it didn't say US Robotics on it, because I love US Robotics products back in the day, and usually they had their information denoted on it. But a WIN modem is more software driven than hardware driven, so I don't know if they contracted out that the manufacturing of that. And of course, we have our network adapters. It's our 10100 card, and our CPU, of course, is our Pentium 4 2.8 gigahertz. As for sound, we just have our legacy sound stuff, but I mean, SoundMax integrated digital audio for anything built on. SoundMax was definitely something that you see quite a bit. And of course, we have our USB installed here as well. Okay, I'm here with Quake 3 Arena on this system, and I've done nothing else to the computer. I've left everything else alone. I'm just going to go into setup real quickly here and just take a look. I mean, I don't know if this is going to work well on this system or not. But under system, I do have it changed to 1024 by 768, just a higher range. I mean, obviously you can go higher than that again, but I'm just going to go into the 1024 by 768 just to take a look. And yeah, just to see if we're going to be able to even play this game properly. So we'll go into single mode, and we'll go to skirmish, and we'll choose a random area, and we'll go into the game. You have taken the lead. Okay, so here we are playing so far, and it's not looking that bad, to be honest. And again, this is with the built-on graphics using this Pentium 4 completely out of the box. So yeah, I would say overall, this is pretty decent, to be honest with you. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the system again and just, yeah, I mean, you can see that we're just using the software there, but I'm going to jump up to 1280 by 1024 and just take a look to see if it crashes or works. You know what? It's working just fine at the different resolution. Yeah, wasn't surviving that one. But you can see, I mean, the quality is pretty darn good here. Let me hit escape, go into setup again. And let's look at our any ability here. Texture details high. And let's go up high, even better. Default, let's go 32-bit. Let's see what that does. Yeah, I mean, that's looking pretty good. And it's not giving any errors, which is nice. I have a feeling he's right there. Nope, okay. It seems a little choppier if you look as I'm moving the mouse, but I would say, you know, and it has slowed down a bit. Oh my goodness, he's right there. I didn't even see him. Oh. Anyway, you can see it's a little choppier, but I mean, I would say that this is a pretty decent game for this. Now, I do realize the game came out in 2000, system when it came out a little later than that, but again, just using built-on graphics, and it seems to be working pretty well. And so I would say that this is definitely something that I would get around, being able to play right out of the box and enjoy some games from this era, not to mention going back in time and playing some older ones. All right, now that said, let's jump on to system number 2. And here we are with system number 2 on the bench. Again, donated, no idea if it's going to work. And looking at it from the perspective of entry level, what came with these systems, and were they good enough at the time for the market they were trying to serve? So anybody who has said they haven't seen Dells in a while on the channel, yeah, you got 2 now. Okay, we have an Inspiron 530 Dell. It looks like we have 2 optical areas here. Yeah, I mean, basically they pop out when you push the buttons, assuming that they're populated. Little door that drops down here. Okay, there we go. We have our 3.5-inch floppy, 4 USB, 2 front accessible audio jacks, as well as what looks like a cutout for a 1394 Firewire connection, assuming that this system had that feature enabled. We also have the Dell logo, as well as a power button, and just kind of a little cool design that they have integrated into the case. As you can see, it's a silver base case. This is where they were really transitioning away from the black systems. We had obviously the ivory systems for many, many years, and then going into this sort of design. And then, of course, we do have our case badges, which is the Windows Vista Basic, as well as the Pentium dual core inside. So this would have came after the Pentium 4 system. Given the age of the system, you see the quality of the build, but also the fact of the condition that we currently have this in. And, some scuffs and things like that, but even being a white, side panel here, it is in really good shape. And we have the Dell logo embossed or engraved into the side here, but we also have the ventilation in the front. Going along the back here, a little bit more, a little easier, I should say, to turn around, given the feet that are on this one. We have our power supply. We have our VGA, 4 additional USB ports along the back. In addition to the front, we now have 8 total. We also have built-on Ethernet, as well as it looks like a slightly upgraded audio array in the back. We also have additional ventilation. So we have our power supply unit up here, but we also have our ventilation. And then we have some expansion ports along with one populated, which looks like, again, another modem. So let's look inside the system. And I like this. It's just a thumb screw on the side, and we'll pop off this case. So the last one had that little latch that opened up, and this time we have a thumb screw. Okay, we're going to flip this around, get a better view of what's inside this system. All right, here's our view into our second Dell system. So we have our optical drive and our floppy disk populated here. So it looks like there's only one of the optical drives in the system, where you have the ability to hook up a second if needed. I'm not seeing a hard disk this time installed, but it does look like it would have been a SATA connection. I do have the SATA cable as well as a SATA power noted. I'm looking at the motherboard. So this time we do have the 4 slots here for additional memory, and let's just see what we have installed. I'm just gonna look at one of them, and it looks like we do have 512 megabytes of PC2, so DDR2. Okay, continuing on here, I'm looking at the capacitors, and I'm not seeing anything out of the ordinary when it comes to any sort of bulging or leaking capacitors, which is always a bonus when you get these older systems. I have definitely had some of these systems where they were quite bad. It's just nice having it to be in this good condition. And of course, we have our CPU and our assembly here for our heatsink. We don't have that kind of vent hood that was here, kind of directing airflow in this area, promoting airflow. We don't have that, but it seems to be pretty well open here, and it's nice to have that additional fan. And then, of course, on the motherboard, we do have a PCI 16 lane as well as a 1X lane, and we do have 2 PCI slots here. So it's great to have that expansion ability. Again, not requiring it, but it's nice to have that ability. So you would have purchased this system as a basic system, and then you would have the abilities, because it does have the built-on graphics as we saw on the back of the case, but you do have the ability to expand it with the additional graphics area here, as well as another sound card if that's what you wanted to do. So it does give you that option, which is quite nice. And of course, the other thing I do like about this is that you do have the SATA, but it's also in that mid era where you do still have the legacy adapters and legacy ports. So you have the ability to hook up that floppy disk. And that's just absolutely awesome to have that, you know, especially when we were transitioning away from all that stuff. It's nice to have that. Continuing on, I do have, it looks like the 4 SATA ports on this board, and it looks like another modem. I'm not going to take it out for the sake of what we're doing here. We'll take a look at that, assuming that this system does post. Okay, we have system number 2 all set up on the bench with our keyboard, mouse, monitor, and yeah, it's looking pretty nice. Actually, it goes quite well together with the color schemes here. Okay, so I have the power plugged into both monitors sitting in idle mode. Let's hit the power and see what happens. And nothing from the power supply. Let's take a look at the back. And the power supply is showing lit up. I'm just not getting any response from the system. Okay, welcome back. We have a different view than you're probably expecting. So we weren't able to, as you saw in the previous sequence, I wasn't able to get the system up and running. It was showing the motherboard light was coming on. There's an indicator on the motherboard that says when it's powered. But one thing I noticed is that the front LED on the power switch wasn't coming on. So I kind of figured there might have been something to do with the power supply itself. So I have it plugged in there using a secondary cord, and I just want to show everyone on the power supply tester what it is doing. So you plug it in here and you'll see what happens. So it is showing the 5-volt rail here is actually not registering. So there's probably an issue with the power supply, whether it's a capacitor, something other component that's not functioning within it. Now, this didn't happen recently to my understanding, because I don't smell anything from it. There's no burning, there's nothing. I mean, the fan is spinning here, but unfortunately the 5-volt doesn't seem to be functioning correctly. So whatever happened before, and probably it happened when the system was decided to be discarded. So we're not seeing anything on that. Now, then the next step I did was I connected a working known power supply, as you can see right here, kind of out of frame. So I have it plugged into the motherboard directly, and I'm going to flip on the switch and you'll see what happens. So the power's coming on to the motherboard, the fan is staying spun up, and the light is coming on, and the front LED is coming on in the power, no problem, but nothing. So I took out all the RAM, I unplugged all the components from the motherboard, as well as anything that was plugged into the motherboard in terms of cards, and nothing. So I plugged in the post analyzer card, and you can see it's not coming out of reset. This top light should be turning off on the right, and it's not. It's not coming out of reset. So something is holding this board in reset. There's probably a short somewhere on the motherboard, probably due to the fact of this power supply going bad. And of course, when the system was given, it was kind of donated, say, here you go, is probably what happened, which is probably why they decided to get rid of it in e-waste. So this is definitely going to turn into some sort of troubleshooting to find out what on the motherboard is causing this to hang into reset. Of course, to do that is outside of the scope of today's video, but definitely something we're going to have to get into and test out. All right, so we have system number 2 on the bench. Unfortunately, it is failing the test. We do not have the ability to get the system up and running to see what would have been on this computer or what it could potentially have done. So that said, we're going to get the bench all cleaned up and get to system number 3. And here we are with system number 3 on the bench. It's a Hewlett-Packard Pavilion system, and in this beautiful, wonderful piano black finish. We all know how much we love that. You saw the gateway video that I did. All right, let's go over this system as well. So we have what looks like our power button, as well as our hard disk indicator up top here. We do have a optical drive populated. Lots of damage in the front. It looks like a lot of scratches, so I'm not exactly sure what would have happened to the system, what would have caused that specifically. We do have what looks like a multi SD card reader, as well as our front audio jacks and front USB 2. We have our HP logo, AMD Vision A4 CPU. So definitely one of the more entry-level CPUs that would have been available at the time, making this system definitely fall into the more entry-level bracket. We do have, no physical dents or dings in the system outside the scratches in the front of the computer. So overall, it's in decent shape. We have a couple of ventilation ducts in the back, on the side, sorry. And on the back here, we do have our power supply. We do have some expansion. You can see it, the motherboard's kind of twisted around in this configuration. We do have the power supply down below, and we have some audio jacks, built-on Ethernet, 4 additional USB in addition to the 2 that we have in the front. And in this case, we do have our VGA, but we also have DVI in this computer, which is nice to see. Okay, here's our third system. So we can see that it's populated with a hard disk drive here, which is very nice. And you can see that it's a definitely different design for sure. I think this is the BTX design, if I'm not mistaken. Keep me honest in the comments, but everything's kind of reversed. The motherboard's on the opposite side and things like that. But you do see the power supply up top here. It is a Hewlett-Packard branded power supply running down to the motherboard. We do have 2 slots for memory. Now, I did see a Windows 8 sticker in the front, so it does give us some sort of idea in terms of what potentially, the age of the computer. We also have our heatsink and power supply assembly. We also have, it looks like a PCI 16 1X, and we have, or 16X, sorry, and we also have 3 additional 1X lanes here. So we do not have any PCI whatsoever. This is definitely pushing it past more of the retro. I mean, Windows 8 is something that I haven't really covered on the channel yet. It's something that I have on my list. Was never my favorite, but we'll see what's installed on this system. So we do have the 2 memory slots, as I said. I always look at the different capacitors, all different components, just, a bird's eye view of that. And I'm not seeing anything that's sticking out of the ordinary. I am seeing that this system does look like it has a wireless card built in. So we do have a wireless, we do have a wireless antenna. Now, I'm seeing only 1 cable coming from it. I generally would see 2, and I do see a secondary port here. So I'm not sure if that was removed or by factory it only came with the 1 antenna coming off of that wireless card. I'm going to pop out one of the memory banks, and we do have, it looks like 2 gigabytes of PC3 memory. So we have DDR3 memory that's installed in the machine. So that's showing, I said 2 gig, and the other one is showing 4 gigs. So we have 6 gigabytes of RAM in this system. And again, like I said, definitely putting this in the later I mean, if you would consider this retro at all, probably not. It's definitely older in terms of the system. But again, this came as part of the trio of systems. So I definitely want to turn it on, see if we can get this up and running. But this does fall into more of the entry-level systems of the time, of course. And we definitely want to take a look to see if this computer will power up. So let's get going. Okay, and we're all set back up. Behind door number 3 is system number 3 on the bench. And let's see if this system will power up and work. Okay, so we do have power coming up here. We have, it looks like post. And it seems to be booting in right away. I'm going to see if I can restart the system to get into the setup. Okay, so I'm in what looks like the Hewlett-Packard setup utility. The product name for this particular pavilion is a P6 2310, sporting an AMD A4-3420 APU, Advanced Processing Unit, with Radeon HD graphics. And the CPU is running at 2.8 gigahertz. And of course, we do have that ability in the back. So we do have the DVI port as well as the VGA, all dedicated on the board. And I mean, you theoretically, where this is more entry level, you could get a PCI 16 lane video card for this to be able to upgrade a little further if you choose to, or in this particular case, we're going to continue on with this. So our cache or level 1 is showing 128 kilobytes by 2, and the same thing with level 2, 512K by 2. And our memory size, we do have the 6 gigabytes of memory. As I mentioned, it does show the 2 slots running dual channel according to what we see here. Okay, that's nice. And then the about just talks about the system itself. It is putting it up to 2012 as the latest so far. So, I mean, we're talking 12-year-old computer. It's definitely not young, but it is still usable. I mean, we'll see what's installed in here in terms of an OS. It was booting into some sort of OS prior to me restarting it. This may make a very good hardware for a Linux distribution because being only 12 years old, you could theoretically get a bunch more life out of the system utilizing a Linux distro. Okay, I'm going to escape on that. Set date and time. It is showing the proper date and time right now. I mean, minus some of the good old daylight savings going on in our world right now. So our storage, our device configuration. So it looks like we have a 500 gigabyte hard disk pre-installed, which is nice that it does still have that. And of course, we have our CD-ROM on SATA 3. It just looks like a DVD RAM drive. Going into security, just your typical security stuff for the system, our power, our hardware power management. It's currently enabled. Again, we don't too much with that. Power on options. So we do have the ability to show our post messages. We're going to turn that on actually. Let's see if I can do that here. Does it give me the option to select? There we go, enable. And just because I want to see if there's any messages that come up. Save, change, and exit because we did make that one change, and see if we are able to boot into some sort of operating system. Okay, we're booted right to the desktop, and it looks like we do have Windows 10 installed in the system, which was one I was not expecting, to be honest with you. If any OS, I thought it was going to be Windows 8 based on the sticker that I found on the computer. And I'm not saying that they don't get upgraded before I get them sometimes, but my experience has been that the majority of them have what's stated on the case itself. Let's just go into this PC. It is very, very sluggish, I will say that, and the computer booting up here. Okay, we have Windows 10 Home, it says, and copyright 2018, so it is verifying that we do have the Windows 10 operating system installed. It does look like a full Hewlett-Packard distribution because, of course, it does have the Hewlett-Packard logo built right into the operating system. And that's key on these other systems, is that no doubt this has recovery software, recovery CD that you could utilize to restore this right back. And because this had Windows 8, you could put it back to that as well. And of course, this would have been upgraded to Windows 10. And I don't know if HP has them on their website or not, but hopefully we can find something on archive.org. So we do have the AMD A4 3420 APU. We saw that in the original setup program. We also have here the 6 gigabytes of memory, 5.47 gigabytes usable because it is sharing part of the memory with the graphics portion of the processor. So we do have all that installed. Let's click on the device manager real quickly here and see what we have in terms of other hardware in this computer. Okay, under disk drives, we do have our multiple card reader USB device. So that's what we have in the front. But we also have our 500 gigabyte hard disk. Display adapters, it is showing an AMD Radeon HD 6410D, no doubt implying desktop. We do have the HP DVD RAM drive, as we talked about earlier. And then looking down, our network adapters. So we do have the wireless card that's installed, but we also have gigabit Ethernet here as well. Okay, continuing on, we do have our processor here. So we do have the A4 3420. And continuing on, I'm not seeing anything else that we need to take a look too much here. We do have the Realtek high definition audio. That's pretty standard on the newer systems. And of course, we do have our storage controller, USB devices, etc. So this is really getting into the more newer side of the business for sure. I mean, we started off with the Pentium 4 and then we went on to the Pentium dual core, which unfortunately we couldn't get going. But this really stretches the edge of what I would show generally on the channel. But again, it kind of fits into the, entry level systems. Okay, so I mean, not to lose sight of what we're trying to accomplish here, all three systems, we were able to get two working fully, no problem, definitely usable. And that middle system, the middle child of these computers, definitely needs a little bit of TLC to find out why it won't come out of reset. All right, let's get the bench all cleared off here and we'll talk about these three computers. And we're back with our trio of systems. And yeah, we have a couple questions to ask ourselves after we go over this. So we have our Pentium 4 system here, and I believe it had 700 megabytes of memory, 768 megs of RAM. And, it fired right up. We were able to get right into Windows XP, and it actually worked quite well. And we were able to play Quake 3 Arena there, no problem as well, on graphics set pretty high. As entry level as these Dells were and how common and widespread they were in the market, They offered a wide range of compatibility. You do have these slots available on this motherboard to upgrade if you wanted to. Now, if you don't want to, and again, the theme of this are, were they that bad? I would say and argue that this computer wasn't that bad. Yes, in the grand scheme of things, with the newer systems and even the systems at this time that were, huge powerhouses and things like that of the time, you would say, well, that's junk. I would never like one of these. Well, I used one of these quite a bit when I was quite younger in my working days. And of course, we saw these in schools and things like that. So I'll tell you that, I would say that this is not that bad, in my opinion, anyway. And plus, you have the ability to be able to do some upgrades to it. And the fact that this system is still working today gives it lots of merit. Then system number two, we have the Dell Inspiron 530. And unfortunately, nothing, I was hoping we'd get into some sort of operating system. I mean, sorry, it didn't have a hard disk, but at least test it after post. And unfortunately, it's sticking in reset. I have no idea what's going on just yet. I'm going to have to do some testing with this. No doubt that power supply caused a short somewhere on the board. So I'm going to have to do some poking and prodding with the multimeter to find out exactly what's going on with it. But definitely haven't given up hope yet on this system. But at the time, using, the sticker really indicates it down here, the case badge. It does show Windows Vista Basic. So that would have required the least amount of hardware to run that operating system, on the computer. And unfortunately, it does have some expansion capabilities in there with the PCI Express, which is nice. But again, until we get that system up and running, I can't really do a lot of testing with it. And then we have this guy here who kind of fell into the mix of these older systems. We do have this Hewlett Packard Pavilion, the AMD Vision A4. So that's the advanced processing unit. So we do have the processor running at 2.8 gigahertz with 6 gigs of RAM, running Windows 10, and we do have that Radeon HD graphics installed. I'm not very familiar with that card, like I mentioned, but it is built on board. Well, I should say built in as part of the processor. So I will say that it does have the PCI Express expansion, but as I mentioned earlier, this definitely would give us some sort of candidate for a Linux distro. I wouldn't keep Windows 10 on this machine. I think we could definitely get this all cleaned up and get this going with a Linux distribution for sure. Let me know down in the comments what you think we should do with that computer. So overall, I mean, I asked the question at the very beginning, are they that bad or were they that bad? And I'm going to say no. I'm going to say, the entry-level systems had a place in this market. And, we always looked at these systems. And as I said in the very intro, we always looked at these computers and said, what could we do better? Or what could we upgrade them to? Or what can we add to these systems to make them faster? Well, there was a subset of people that just were very happy with utilizing these systems for what they were intended for at the time. And the same thing happens even today, where you're finding systems like this. I believe LGR, if I recall, did a recent video on one of these types of systems. And he showed in that video specifically that you can utilize these systems for retro gaming. And I believe that. And even today, if you get a hand on one of these systems, as common as they were, being an old Dell, you can do a lot with these computers. And I would argue that you could do a lot with these other two as well, assuming we get the system up and running. And again, getting some sort of different operating system going on the third system. I would say at the time, they were not that bad. That said, if you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Almost 65% of the viewers are not subscribed to the channel, so please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. Hit the notification button, change it to all. You'll be notified of new content such as this. Please leave a comment down below. Give me your stories. Have you owned one of these systems? When you were purchasing systems, were you buying basic systems and utilizing them until you could upgrade them or just leave them as is? Do you have any of these systems today that you use for any sort of retro activities? Let me know down in the comments, as well as what we should do with system number 3. I respond to absolutely every comment. Love the interaction on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.